WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I've got my Pizza John's Maryland-colored hat on, despite the fact that things did not go well on the worldwide leader. They brought the big show, the big bus, the State Farm ESPN bus joined us over in Canton at Lee's Pint and Shell last week with Mimi Brown. But alas, things did not go well for the Terps. But I thought I would reach back to the guy we see on Tuesday nights on the worldwide leader and my old pal from formerly of the Big Ten and one time the Pac-10. We welcome Jon Crispin, ESPN, from the worldwide leader back on. Dude, I'm not going to blame it on the bus or all the fanfare, all the drinking that was done on a 28-degree day down at College Park. But I would say this, bro. It was really, really good to have Maryland be this vibrant centerpiece place on a Saturday night. I was at my friend Howard's 50th birthday party. The entire bar watching Maryland, everybody into Maryland. Been a little while around here, John. It's a good vibe to have that back from a guy that loves basketball as much as you do, right?
Yeah. Oh, look. Maryland's important. I think that's one of the things. When Maryland came to the Big Ten, I don't think they realized how important they were to the Big Ten, and it wasn't just that DMV media market. You know what I'm saying? Like it was all about this media market, and we got to make sure that we get all these people dialed in to watch Maryland and the Big Ten. No, it wasn't about that. It's big time basketball, man. That's what it's really all about. It's big-time basketball. It's national championship-level basketball. It's ACC-winning basketball. You got to bring this to the Big Ten. And I feel like they're doing that at this point. The next step is going to be having to win this conference title.
You know, I felt that way.
Conference title, you win the tournament championship. I think that's what really turns things over.
You and I have been at this a little while, a number of years, going back to your days in the Big Ten. And, yeah, I don't want to say an apologist for the Big Ten or whatever. Anybody who's an ACC guy, everybody here hated it. You know, I mean, everybody calling it on the radio show 10 years ago, everybody hated it. I don't know that Turgeon even liked it in the beginning. But this has been a season where I put on an Ohio State game last week against Maryland. And not that any other season it was different, but it feels like more like the shoe fits a little bit better now, right, in some way.
Yes.
And more than that, it is a very, very high level of basketball that even though it's in Indianapolis next week and not Greensboro all these years later, you can look at this, and I've told this story all week. You know, I coached Bino Ransom when he was a kid, and the night before they signed Morcell, he sent me a cryptic text and said, you got to get over to St. Joe tomorrow. We're doing something big. And I remember going over and looking through the glass at Mount St. Joe and seeing Morcell committing to Maryland. And here we are a couple of years later, and they're playing Michigan State at home, and ESPN bus is there, and they're top 10, and they're supposed to win, and they have national you know, all the things that you would dream up that you would have wanted for the program sit there right now, and now they got to go win some basketball games later in the month and not have excuses about how it didn't go well for them on Saturday night, because it didn't, right?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. I think they have one of the best teams talent-wise. That's not the question. I think the real issue is whether this team can physically manage things down the stretch, and that's been the Big Ten. The Big Ten for years is, and especially in a year where, you know, we've talked about freedom of movement and there's hook and hold, all these things that they're trying to clean up. As the season goes on, it gets more and more physical. And that's what you're starting to see. So my question is, can this Maryland team manage that physicality? Whereas, you know, last year it wouldn't have been a question. Bruno Fernando was the physical presence that you needed. This year, can Jalen Smith be that guy? Look, he's gotten tougher throughout the course of the season, but actually closing the door when things are at its physical peak, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge because talent-wise, I think Maryland's up there with the best in the country, not just in this conference.
Well, we're going to talk about depth, and you played on teams that went 9, 10 deep in your day, back in the day at UCLA and whatnot. Maryland's playing with 6 guys, essentially, and sometimes the 5th and 6th guys look like, do we have anything in the 8 and 9 that we can move into the 5 or 6? I mean, there are various, and it doesn't feel like at this point that's not where Turgeon's going to go, and, you know, he's going to get all 39 and 1/2 minutes out of Sticks, right?
Yeah, I think it's trust. That's what you see, especially when pressure sets in, right? And pressure is setting in, the pressure of expectation, the pressure of demands. You know, this is a fan base that is demanding a higher level of play, a higher level of outcome, really, for this program. So I think Turgeon knows that. He feels it. So you end up playing the guys that you trust first and foremost. You know, you trust that they're going to give you the same type of effort night in, night out. And I think that's been the biggest issue is who can he trust? Well, he trusts the guys that give him major minutes. Even Dante Scott, I mean, here's a guy who's coming in. He trusts him to go make plays, trusts him to get rebounds, play defense. Those are the guys who are going to play the bulk of the minutes. And I actually, I'm on the other train of thought. Like, guys will get tired, but if they get into a rhythm and a flow of the game, I'd rather them be tired but playing at the rhythm and flow that they created than coming in and out of a game and having to recreate that rhythm. I really feel like the teams down the stretch that are able to win at a high level in the NCAA tournament are the ones that are 6, 7, 8 guys deep. And the 8th guy is really there for foul trouble. But 6 or 7 guys are going to play the bulk of those minutes, and there's a rhythm to the game that they control. And I feel like there's something about that gives teams an edge. I think the teams that go 10, 11, 12 deep, they have too many guys they try to feel out the game with, and they never really create a flow that favors them. So I think this could actually be to their favor down the stretch.
Jon Crispin joining us here at one time with the Big Ten Network, now with the worldwide leader, and catch him on the set. Tell me what you're doing, because, I mean, you've moved around a little bit. You're more ACC-centric here. I mean, we traded the ACC for the Big Ten. You went the other direction to some degree. But, I would say basketball along the line, it's up for grabs everywhere this year except North Carolina. I like giving them a kick in the nuts. I mean, it makes it that's fun for us up here. We like that.
Yeah, it's fun. That's kind of been what it's like all year too. Because I'm doing Super Tuesday ACC slate with Reese Davis, and on Saturdays I'm in studio, and every now and then Sunday as well. Obviously, random games here and there, some conference tournament games, and that was the Wooden Legacy earlier in the year. It's been fun, but it's funny how the debate, when I was at the Big Ten Network, it was all about how the Big Ten was better than the ACC. And now it's like the conversation has to go the other way, but it's just impossible because I've told some of the ACC folks, I'm like, from bottom to top, there's not a better conference in college basketball. The Big Ten is it. From bottom to top. Now, from top to bottom, it might be different, but it's not the ACC, it's the Big 12. You got Kansas and Baylor, so it's fun to dance around and be involved in these different conferences, especially the ones that are great year in, year out. But there's something special about the Big Ten that is unlike anything else, and I think it's primarily due to the fact that the Big Ten has a ton of 4-year guys. 4-year guys are the consistency that those programs build with, and it's not just the programs, it's the universities. Those fan bases, they buy into these kids because they see them on campus for 4 years. And then they cheer for him on the basketball court. I think that's something that, with the one and done the way it is, with a lot of those high major programs, your Dukes, your Kansases, your Kentuckys, and Baylors, you name it, they're going to get the best players and they're going to leave the second they have a great year. I think that's something that's missing that the Big Ten provides. And I do. I miss that, not being back at the Big Ten, but life isn't too bad. You travel around and talk basketball.
Well, I was going to say, man, you're almost 40, and you finally live long enough for Penn State and Rutgers to both become relevant, right? As a South Jersey guy, right? I mean, when you say bottom to top and top to bottom, I know what you're talking about because there was a point where Penn State, Northwestern, and Rutgers were literally the outhouse, kind of on the football side, the way the Indianas and the Marylands are when it comes to the Penn States and the Ohio States and the Michigans, that it is a little bit of a sideways conference in that way. I love that Rutgers can get up and do something. I don't want to see him beat Maryland this week and all that, but I do love the fact that there aren't these beat down teams anymore. And you may want to speak to one half of one of your alma maters in Penn State. They built a nice thing there. I had Dick Girardi on the show last week.
Yeah, they've done a really nice job, and really they've done it with talent, man. That's going to be, which I think is good and bad at the same time. I think if you build with talent, you better keep loading up. That's the biggest challenge is you get great talent. Penn State has some serious talent from Philadelphia, and there's now an emphasis on having to reload. I mean, you lose Lamar Stevens, you lose Mike Watkins, that's your entire front line. By the way, Lamar Stevens is a pro. You lose that, you've got to reload. So I want to see them have somewhat of a combination of talent, because to me it's got to be sustainable. I want to see them have talent and then sustainable growth, meaning guys that become freshmen that grow into the sophomore years, and then now as juniors and seniors, they're real contributors. But all the meanwhile, there's this constant influx of talent. Now, it may not be 4 or 5 guys, may not be 10 guys, but you got to have that right balance. So I think that's the next step for Penn State to be able to sustain this success, this growth, because, man, they do have a special thing going, and people are showing up again. It's good to see that. I mean, we used to get 15,000 people at games in 2000, 2001 when we made a Sweet 16 run. But, man, to see them showing up again and to take the curtains off the top, the upper deck there at the Bryce Jordan Center, that's a good sign.
I was going to say, Bryce Jordan Center, I know two things. Springsteen plays there every once in a while, and it's a hell of a place to stay warm during a tailgate for a Penn State game.
That's exactly what people think of the Bryce Jordan Center. Sadly, a lot of them also basketball players. It's a massive place. It was made for monster trucks and Billy Joel concerts, man. Like that's what it was really made for. But to get it filled up is good. One of these days, if they can sustain high level play long enough, maybe they'll build them a new rec hall.
Dude, I can't have you on doing the national thing now at ESPN, John, without talking about the bigger picture of everything here. Where Maryland sits, going out to Indianapolis, a road you know well, where they're going to double bye and they got to win a couple of games. Do they want to be a 1 seed? Is there a value in that? Can they even be a 1 seed if they run the table here? But Kansas, Gonzaga, what's going on with the Daytons and the San Diego States and the Little Engines? And then there's the Duke and the Kentuckys and the regular teams. But more than that, the Michigan States and the teams that sort of went wayward in the middle of the season that have sort of come back to be like, I don't want to see them next week again, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think Kansas is the best team in the country. I think Baylor's got some holes, and it's something I actually pointed out on Sin Studio this weekend, was basically there's some holes defensively and ways to exploit Baylor's defense, and we saw that again this weekend. TCU just took it to them. Gonzaga's at a high level. Dayton's playing at a high level, but Dayton hasn't been tested all year. So Dayton's vulnerability is more so the fact that they haven't played many other high-level teams, not since they lost to Kansas. And their best win is a great loss, Kansas in Maui. So I think teams like San Diego State are very vulnerable. Florida State incredibly vulnerable. Duke vulnerable. Kentucky vulnerable. Maryland right there in the mix. Is Maryland?
But you didn't say vulnerable with Maryland. I mean, is Maryland vulnerable?
Here's the thing. Are they perfect? No. Are they vulnerable? Yes, just like everybody else in college basketball. And what I would say Maryland's most vulnerable to, it's not even the physicality that I talked about earlier when it comes to these other teams in the country. What they're vulnerable to is not making an adjustment that they need to make in the game. Now, I think one of the reasons why I buy into Maryland is at Illinois. Illinois came out hot against Maryland. I mean, incredibly hot. They were on fire. Mark Turgeon calls timeout and goes to a zone. The zone completely cut the rhythm of the game, and it eventually gave Maryland the opportunity to come back and win that game. I mean, it was everything, just that minor adjustment. So I look at that and say, all right, as vulnerable as they are, as is everybody else, and we saw Creighton lost to St. John's, and Creighton's right behind Maryland in the rankings. Creighton lost by 20 points. So everybody's vulnerable.
Well, everybody puts up a turd once a year, right?
But you could, and they've had a few. But what I say is you can limit your vulnerabilities by preparing for adjustments. And I feel like that's something Mark Turgeon's shown this year that I haven't really seen in years past, that he's been able to adjust, adapt to the game, and then let his players go out and make plays. So I would say as vulnerable as the top is, I do have good feelings about Maryland. Whether they're 1 or 2 doesn't really matter.
Jon Crispin joining us here from the worldwide leader at ESPN. Man, we brought the bus in here. I went out drinking in Canton the other night. They had the State Farm bus in. Mimi Brown, the lovely host of the event over there. We had Terps fans out. Is there some whammy with the bus coming to town that we should worry about? I mean, is that too much hype for you, Crispin?
You know what? I do think there's a little issue with the bus coming to town and causing problems for teams because it has become such a big show. I mean, I think you've seen. Have you noticed that the record for the teams that are hosting game day has been a problem? I mean, football is a different story. Every football weekend's big. Basketball doesn't seem to be able to handle it that well. So it's kind of interesting to follow this, and it's like the mini Super Bowl every week that the home team seems to struggle with.
Well, and the visiting team gets all fired up, right? It's Monday Night Football on the road, right? Like literally.
Yeah, it's free hype. Free hype for the visiting team, and quite frankly, too much pressure for the home team because then you got these fans out here all day. They're clamoring for a W.
Well, we're just trying to get you to be a homer for the Terps around here, but I'm getting no hope. I'm getting vulnerable out of you. Which, John, we all watch the game Saturday. We know they're vulnerable.
Yeah, they're vulnerable.
We agree with you. We just don't want to agree with you. And I'm sitting around here, and here's the weird part. Look, man, you're South Jersey guy in baseball, football, 4 seasons. I mean, you probably even like the Flyers. It'll wreck our friendship if I find that out. But opening day this year is the day of the Sweet 16. Opening day was always a sort of iconic day where we went to the game, put half a load on back in the 90s, went home, watched a national championship game at 9 o'clock. Now it's Sweet 16 on opening day. Maryland better be playing in the back end, right? Maryland better be playing Sweet 16 Thursday and Friday. I think that's a level of expectation that everybody has around here that was set by them in January and February by playing a month without losing, right?
Yes, I definitely think Sweet 16, quite frankly, I feel like if they're not an Elite Eight team, I think fan base would be disappointed unless the matchup was just brutal. Unless they get a Sweet 16 matchup where you're just like, that's just not a good look. That's not a good matchup for them. But other than that, I think Maryland is expected to be one of those teams vying for a Final Four berth. I mean, that's really what it is, and I think it's understandable that they would be in that conversation. 22-5. I don't care. You just lost to Michigan State, and Michigan State is playing with a bit of desperation. And they're also playing back to who they once were, which is we actually win with less by executing more.
It also it helps when you hit 75-foot shots too, right?
Oh yeah. But they hit shots early. They hit half-court bombs at halftime, and they executed. They really did. They set hard screens. They were able to play the game they wanted to play it, which kind of goes back to the start. You got to start a game strong. I think that's been Maryland's Achilles heel throughout the course of the season is not starting strong but finishing strong. And at some point, you kind of run out of gas.
John, I'll tell you what, man. I hope we don't run out of gas around here. And I'm looking at this, and you're like, they got to make the grade 8. And the night they would be in the grade 8, we have Pearl Jam in Baltimore that night at the Rofo Arena.
Geez.
So, I mean, there could be some real conflicts going on with Maryland playing for a chance to go to the Final Four and Eddie Vedder doing some Yellow Ledbetter or something like that going on.
Yeah, so, I'll tell you, that would be a tough one. Some decisions would have to be made. Some executive decisions.
I just hope they don't wear those gold shoes. I have the new Magma lamp here on the set. I have a Terps Magma lamp that has gold magma in it, and it looks just like the shoes they wore the other night. They need to burn those shoes. And by the way, Michigan State never deserves to win when they're wearing that Dayglow green pajama set that they put on the other night. I mean, what's happened to these people?
I don't really like. It doesn't look as bad as the ones they wore in the football field. On the football field.
Oh, no doubt. What would Coach Wooden make of all of this? I mean, you're a Wooden devotee. You know about the pyramid.
Man.
Where on the pyramid would Wooden put those shoes the other night?
Just remember that Wooden was the guy that was willing to sit or kick Bill Walton off his team for not shaving. You know what I'm saying? Like,
we're going to miss you, Bill.
Yep. First thing he ever taught his players was how to put their socks on. You know what I mean? Like, so you start to think about these things and go, all right, how does he fit today? Well, that's a great question, and I just wonder if his team would look a little bit more old school. I don't think he would waver.
Well, dude, I want to say this, man. One day you and I will just get together and do nothing but talk about Wooden, okay? We'll do that after the season. How about that?
Yeah, he's everything. He really did it right. And the thing is, his lessons weren't even basketball. His lessons were really life. He just brought all the basketball to the court, and it's amazing how logical it all is. I mean, he was really a genius ahead of his time.
Character over reputation every time, Crispin. Yep. Hey, man, enjoy yourself. Get some rest. I know it's hard for you in the coming weeks, tournament week and all that hype and all that stuff. You're the new Dickie V, so wave the towel there at the Worldwide Leader. We'll be watching. All right.
You got it, man. I appreciate it.
Jon Crispin, ESPN, and the Worldwide Leader. Go find him out on Twitter and on a television near you on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Terps getting ready this week for some big basketball, as well as the Big Ten tournament next week out in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I skipped the Combine this week. But have no fear. I've got guys that were at the Combine doing damage to their liver that is now undone to mine for another year. We'll hear from Mike Tenier. We'll hear from Matt Lombardo, Eric Edholm, all my pals that were out in Indianapolis last week. We got lots of Terps. Jon Feinstein up in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault. Dave Thurston had a great conversation with Chris Nockey. It is Gary Williams' 75th birthday this week. Yeah, it's true. Go listen to Coach Nockey and Jon Feinstein tell some old Gary Williams stories as well. Got some basketball on the brain. Got a big week around here as well. Spring training in progress, as well as the Ravens getting ready for free agency. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. On the set with my Strategic Factory cup and drinking out of my Pizza John's cup and drinking the water of Liberty Pure. I got to get some Liberty Pure. I got 2 cases of it in my trunk. Thanks, Doug. But I keep leaving it in the trunk, so I'm going to bring some water up onto the set. So I'm drinking clean. It's important. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking clean water in Baltimore sports.